Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of the Tiger Vision Sports Talk. I'm Zach. I'm filling in for the lovely Gabby Bates this evening. Joining me will be Zach Beard and Zach Silverman tonight. Boys, there's a plethora of stories to get to this week, so let's go ahead and jump in and get right down to it. Let's start off with the NFL, if you will. We're going to open up the floor to you two, and let's talk about some major headlines and what stood out to you guys in terms of the big teams, the big winners of the weekend, and the losers of the weekend.
Well, definitely a big loser of the weekend would be my New England Patriots on primetime football going into Kansas City, which is a strong team, and just getting absolutely blown out of the water. Another big loser is the Oakland Raiders, who, Zach Orr's not quite sure if they're even a football team. They have no coach, they have no wins, they have no quarterback after Derek Carr hurt his ankle. So we'll see how it goes. What are your top stories from the week?
My top stories from the week, I have to go with the Patriots too. That was really concerning. Looks like there might be a flaw in Belichick's wonderland, huh?
All right, well, you use the word concerning, and I'm going to tell you why it's not a concern. First of all, it's week 4. They're 2-2, tied for the lead in the division. I mean, you can't win the Super Bowl in November,
you can lose
in October, in September, and the Patriots are going to get better as the season goes on, as we get into January. I mean, right now the offensive line is a mess. Rodney Harrison said live yesterday that Brady looks scared in the pocket right now, and when you have less than 2 seconds to throw, you should be scared in the pocket. It takes the average quarterback, whether you're Peyton Manning, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, any quality of quarterback, 3 seconds to make a read and get the ball off. And if you can't protect for that long, you're doing something wrong. That being said, there's plenty of time to fix this problem, and it's going to be a bigger problem on the road than at home, especially in an environment like Kansas City when they just broke the decibel level last night. I'm not particularly worried about the offense. The defense, as you see guys like Gerard Mayo, Vince Wilfork start to get a little more healthy coming off of season-ending injuries that had them out all of last year, I think the defense will improve as the health improves.
This might just be the homer in me. Another big story that we saw this week was Steve Smith sticking it to Carolina. How about that strong performance? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, if I could have bet on one game this week and 1 week only with my life savings, I would have bet on Steve Smith just taking it to the Carolina Panthers. I mean, Steve Smith, when he's motivated, is one of the best players in the league at any age. He's a fantastic receiver. He just wins matchups he shouldn't win. He's 5'9", 5'10", and he's just going over 6-foot cornerbacks and catch touchdown passes. And he really stuck it to him. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards receiving. Can't perform much better than that.
Absolutely, that was a great performance, clutch performance. You could tell he was really looking to get the ball. He was in position even when he shouldn't have been. If you guys saw that deflection that he took to the house. Yep. Did you catch his quote after the game? He said, "I'm a 35-year-old man, and I ran around those players like they were schoolyard kids."
That's exactly what he did.
Strong
Made
words.
them look like middle schoolers.
Absolutely. That's another story on, in your opinion. What's another one we should look at?
Well, I think another one is that before this week, you had people freaking out just as much about the Green Bay Packers as people are freaking out about the Patriots now. And Aaron Rodgers went on the radio, and he had 5 letters for Green Bay Packers fans, RELAX, relax. And Rodgers just showed them exactly why they should do that. Over 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, just dismantled the Chicago Bears. Another story on the flip side, the New Orleans Saints, 1-3. Loss in Cleveland is a bad loss. That's not a team that's looking like a playoff quality team right now that just got blown out of the water by Tony Romo in Dallas.
And we might be having a quarterback controversy up in New York. During the game, we could hear a lot of fans chanting, "We want Vic." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, goal for Geno Smith coming into the season was to cut down on the turnovers. Through 4 weeks, he's got more turnovers than any quarterback in the NFL. So clearly he's not achieving the only goal that he had.
But then again, you look at your other option, Mike Vick. If you put him in there, like, how much can you get out of him? He's had a lot of durability issues, especially near the end there for Philadelphia. So we'll see what they decide to go with moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know if he can do better, but doesn't look like he can do worse.
I agree.
You know, boys, that's a lot of great points you made tonight. Let's bring it back a little bit. Zach, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Patriots. You compared them to Green Bay. The Patriots are a team that, as you said, have no offensive line at the moment. They traded away arguably their best offensive lineman to Tampa Bay at the beginning of the season because that's what New England does. They trade guys, and it usually works out for them. Maybe this one kind of came back to bite them in the butt, if you will. New England has beat 2 teams this year. They've beaten Minnesota and Oakland. Oakland, as you and I both know, is a miserable 0-4. No head coach, no quarterback, no structure at all, if you will. They beat the Minnesota team with Matt Castle at the helm. That's an all right win. I'll give you that win. But at the same time, you went into Kansas City. They broke the decibel record, and you got spanked. You got spanked badly. It was not a fun game to watch. especially for Patriots fans. It was almost embarrassing, and it was like it was deja vu. Not even deja vu. I don't know how to explain it. Tom Brady throwing those interceptions, fumbling the ball. It was something that was unusual, and it was something that we've never seen with Patriots football before. I think you have to seriously take a look and step back from an unbiased point of view and ask yourself, is this maybe a corner that you've turned that you're not going to come back from?
Well, I mean, don't forget, the last time the Patriots lost a game by 27 or more points in a season, they happened to win the Super Bowl that year, which was the 31-0 loss to Buffalo. We're talking about the offensive line. I think the biggest issue isn't necessarily the players Nate Solder's very talented. Marcus Cannon has a lot of talent, performed well last year. The biggest change on the offensive line is the coach, and that's Dante Scarnecchia, who is an absolute legend in New England, 25-plus years, and a fantastic system. And now they've got a new offensive line coach, a new system. They've got to work into that, and that's going to take a lot of adjusting, especially when you have some of Scar's guys, the veterans like Logan Mankins, that are gone now. And part of that is a transitional move that you don't necessarily want to have a guy who's been playing a certain way for years and years in a new system when he's just going to be doing a lot of the old things that might clash with that. So I think as the season goes on, as we get to week 8, week 9, Patriots are going to be a lot more cohesive on the offensive line. Brady's going to be protected, and as Rob Gronkowski gets more healthy too, don't forget that he's still struggling a little bit coming off that torn ACL. I think the offense is going to look good. And Brandon LaFell actually had a fairly solid game, which is nice to see Brady have a receiver over 6 feet to throw to.
I mean, I agree with those points. I do. It's just how long is too long to wait for the Patriots? You're going to be a team that's, if by week 8 is what you're saying, they're going to be reasonably good. You're 2-6 by then. Yeah, that's not a good start for a Patriots team that's been the epitome of excellence, if you will. They've been a team that has been setting the bar for the rest of the NFL to follow. Belichick is first ballot Hall of Famer when he hangs it up, and so is Tom Brady. But like I said, Brady's throwing the interceptions. He has no time in the pocket, like you've alluded to. They're 30th in passing yards right now. A Tom Brady offense is 30th in the league in passing yards, just over 200 yards a game. They're giving up 130 a clip a game in the run. I don't see this team being successful this year. You go through a bit of a gauntlet. You're going playing Cincinnati this coming week. That's going to be a tough game for you guys to win. Cincinnati is the only undefeated team left in the NFL.
Arizona.
Arizona. Yeah, you're right. You always get me with that one. Cincinnati is the better undefeated team left in the NFL. And then you go to Buffalo, and you have New York at home. Those are three games that are losable games. You guys always struggle with New York, and you're at Buffalo. You always struggle in Buffalo. I think it's time to step back and maybe take a dose of reality with the New England Patriots this year.
I think the Patriots, in the Belichick era, you can count on two things. You can count on them being dominant at home. They've only lost 2 home games in the past 2 seasons, counting this season so far. And the offensive line is going to be better at home. They're not going to have to deal with the vicious crowd noise they would in a place like Kansas City. The Buffalo game might be a little bit of trouble, but I still think that's a winnable game when you're playing against Kyle Orton at quarterback. And Belichick teams very rarely lose after losses, and that's why I like our chances against Cincinnati this week. They might be the more talented team at this second, but I think Belichick's just going to outcoach Marvin Lewis. And if there's one thing we know, it's that Belichick is a better coach than Marvin Lewis.
All right, moving on from those Patriots, let's talk a little bit about the Redskins. The Redskins played the Giants last week on Thursday night. They were an absolute train wreck. They have Kirk Cousins starting at quarterback right now, who is maintaining it as Robert Griffin III's team. Where do you guys see them going the rest of the year? Do they have any chance of winning a couple of ball games from here on out?
I think the biggest thing with Washington is really just who's at the helm. You could really tell there was a lot of miscommunication with Kirk Cousins in the pocket. I mean, he threw 4 interceptions, and I really think that the offensive line is built for a mobile quarterback like RG3. And when you have a pocket passer like Kirk Cousins, it's not going to hold up, which is why he got so many sacks. I think the Redskins' chances this season really hinge on whether or not RG3 does come back at all this year.
I think Kirk Cousins is a quarterback who always performs better when he's this guy off the bench, the guy that hasn't been game planned for. When you can game plan for Kirk Cousins, you know what he's going to do, you can shut him down. But when he's coming in, when he's got to be the guy, when he knows that he's going to have to be better than the defensive game plan, I don't think he's the guy that can do it.
I agree. Absolutely.
All right, you guys brought up, or Zach, you specifically brought up Cincinnati and Arizona. Who loses first out of those two, and why?
Well, they both have tough matchups. Arizona's going into Denver, and Cincinnati's going into New England. I still think that Arizona's going to come out with a win this week. Patrick Peterson's going to be able to shut down whoever he pleases on the field, whether that's Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius Thomas. the defensive line has been resurgent, and the linebacking core has been the same. When many people thought that since they lost a lot of their stars from last year, they were going to be worse, the drop-off has not taken place through 3 games so far. The offense somehow manages to keep rolling under Drew Stanton thanks to Bruce Arians and Andre Ellington, and some fantastic wideout play from Michael Floyd, Larry Fitzgerald, and I think we're going to continue to see that. We're going to see Arizona get a win. We're going to see Cincinnati get a loss.
I think we see Arizona fall. I mean, Denver. It's going to be at Denver. It's going to be an evening game. The fans are going to be rowdy. I just don't think Arizona is good enough to take this win away from the Broncos. I'm sorry.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Beard. I think Arizona is going to lose this weekend. I think Cincinnati has, if you will, a cupcake game up in New England this week.
Oh.
I think that's an easy win for them. I think that is at least a double-digit win for them. Brady's a joke for an NFL quarterback at this point. It wouldn't be a sports talk show with me at the helm if we weren't talking about some Giants football real quick. I know we talked about New England for a little while. We talked about the Ravens. As I said, the Giants went in and crushed the Redskins before. Where do you see this Giants team going? Where do you see them ending up? They have Atlanta this week at 1 o'clock at MetLife. It's a 2-2 team looking to get above 500. What do you see happening?
Well, if you wanted to talk about a joke of a quarterback, let's go back to Mr. League leading interceptions last year, who certainly wouldn't be a surprise if he did it again this year. Other than the one massive 175-yard game from Rashad Jennings, the Giants haven't been impressive on offense. Their defense has been fairly torchable. Other than by Kirk Cousins, another terrible NFL quarterback, if we're being frank. And I don't particularly see a lot for this Giants team, especially when Dallas is looking very solid in that division, coming off of a crushing win over the Saints, and Philly's going to be Philly.
You can get this.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you look at a lot of the Giants' rankings, they're 16th in passing yards, 16th in rushing yards, 22nd in opposing passing yards, and 10th in opposing rushing yards. I mean, the run defense is really all they got going for them. They're middle of the road and everything else. I think this is a Giants team that we see either go anywhere from 7-9 to 9-7. I don't really think there's much uphill or downhill for them. They are what they are. It's just kind of a bland team that'll finish middle of the road, if you ask me.
Yeah, and within that division, I want to talk about the resurgence, I guess, of DeMarco Murray, who's leading the NFL in yards, carries, and has just been an absolute stalwart for the Dallas Cowboys. And the less Tony Romo throws for them, probably the better at this point, given his still recovering back situation. But that's a team that can go far if they can ride DeMarco Murray in that offensive line, which have been fantastic. 3 of their last 4 first-round picks have been offensive linemen, and it's showing.
Yeah, no, DeMarco Murray is the guy that the Dallas Cowboys have always talked about having a ton of potential, and we've finally been seeing it come to fruition this year. Every single game he's played in this year, he's had at least 100 yards rushing. He's had a touchdown in every game. He's getting in on the receiving game a little bit. He's really just a breakout guy who I think is going to be what finally takes the Dallas Cowboys to the next level. I don't think the Cowboys are going to finish 8-8 this year. I really don't. I think we're going to see a much more solid finish from them, especially in the stretch, now that they have a more solidified running game and we're starting to see some consistency out of Romo.
Let's not pretend that the Cowboys have ever been synonymous with consistency, excellence, or any good play whatsoever.
Except in the 90s.
Except in the 90s when Aikman and Smith were there, and all those guys. But now it's Tony Romo who drops field goals in playoff games in Seattle. I mean, he does the whole nine. He has what? Does he have a playoff win? I don't think he does. So, I mean, the Giants, let's go back to them. The more importantly, the best team in the division.
You want to talk about Philly?
Not even true. The Giants, let me say my piece, then you can rebut it, and we'll move on. Giants are a team that installed a new offense this offseason. Ben McAdoo came in, and they're going to run a West Coast offense with an emphasis on the power run. As you mentioned, Rashad Jennings, guy was a beast a couple of weeks ago, 175 yards. It was a career high against Houston, career high in yards and carries. It's going to be interesting to see if he can keep that up the rest of the year. Right now, he's on pace for the second most carries behind the aforementioned DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray is having a phenomenal year. You got to give him that. I can't take that away from him as much as it hurts being a Giants fan. In terms of the Giants, furthermore, you got to give it time. They started the season 0-2. Their preseason, they did go undefeated, but the first team did absolutely nothing in the preseason. Coming off 2 wins, were 30 and 45 points respectively in each game against an Atlanta team with a depleted offensive line for the defense to just prey on, and for a depleted secondary for Eli to prey on. He's getting the ball out quick. I just had a stat man tell me that he is second in the league in terms of getting the ball out quick out of the snap. So it's an offense that's coming along, offense that's starting to click. You get a player like Odell Beckham Jr. back this week, a guy that's a fast receiver, can stretch the field, give you an over-top threat. I don't know. It's the perfect storm brewing for the Giants, and it's going to be, we're going to party like it's 2007 again, huh, Zach?
Well, if we meet in the Super Bowl, I would absolutely love to get that rubber match, win the third game. I just don't see the Giants coming out of that division. I think Dallas is going to win 10 games. Philly could win 10 games, and both of them are going to sweep Dallas. Both of them are going to sweep the Giants.
All right, before we move on, real quick, Thursday night game is Minnesota-Green Bay. Who do you guys got and why?
Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay.
Yeah?
It's not really a question.
Yeah, no, I agree. Is Teddy Bridgewater back now, or is he?
Christian
he limped
Ponder
off
might
that
get the
ankle
start.
injury. We're not quite sure.
Yeah.
Haven't heard yet whether he's going to play or not.
Huh?
Yeah, no, exactly. If they have to put in Ponder to start at Green Bay, it's game over. There's not a chance.
All right, perfect. Let's move on to some Major League Baseball real quick, boys. The playoffs are finally in motion here. It's the most exciting time of the year for the Major League Baseball. Last night we saw a very exciting game in Kansas City. Kansas City beat out Oakland last night. I believe it was 12 innings. It was an absolute beauty of a game. You couldn't ask for anything better from October baseball. Tonight you got San Francisco and Pittsburgh. Where do you guys see the playoffs going? And give me your thoughts on last night's game.
Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit about just the wild card system. When it came into play, I was kind of against it. I didn't really think it was going to be good for baseball. Didn't know what a one-game playoff. You can't really showcase your team. You don't get to trot out your best 2 or 3 pitchers. You really only get one guy.
Sure.
But these games have been fantastic. I mean, last night's game was an absolute just all-time classic for a new system. Definitely going to be a statement game in keeping the system or any potential playoff expansion they're going to want to have. Tonight's matchup is all about pitching. Madison Bumgarner has been an ace all year for the Giants. Edson Volquez, the same for the Pirates. I'm going to take the Pirates in last year's, potentially this year's, although I have Kershaw. NL MVP McCutchen is going to come through in the clutch.
Yeah, no, I agree with that Kansas City game. That was very exciting. Salvador Perez's walk-off hit was ridiculous. I was watching it in Malden with my buddies Nick and Alan and Vince, I guess. But yeah, it was just a really exciting game, and I too was a little bit skeptical about the winner-take-all playoff seeding, but it was definitely entertaining. A little fact I read earlier is that the Oakland Athletics are 0-6 in winner-take-all games under Billy Beane. So sabermetrics might get you there, but as we saw last night, if you don't have anyone that can field, you're not going to make it real far in the playoffs. But I think a couple teams you have to look out for in the postseason are St. Louis Cardinals, are a team that are always just manage to slip into the playoffs, but they know what to do when they get there. They have a ton of experience in the last 15 years, really. Look at a team like Baltimore, excuse me for being a homer, but they just have real active bats across the board, and their pitching has been real consistent lately. And you got to look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers are just stacked from top to bottom, and I think that they can make a lot of noise in the playoffs if everything goes their way. And I think it'll be an interesting October, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Dodgers-Cardinals, I think, is the best series of the first round, hands down. That's going to be a 5-game series. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out slugfest. I don't know. I think the Washington Nationals, I'm going to stick with my pick, are going to come out on top. And I really like the Kansas City Royals. They play a brand of baseball that you don't really see a lot now. They do a lot of running. They've stolen third the most of any team, 29 times in the regular season, time or two last night. Eric Hosmer was playing some fantastic clutch baseball, getting on when he was the leadoff hitter, hitting a triple in extras to score a tying run when they went down. I mean, that's what you need. You just need one guy can come through and make all the difference. It's kind of an individual sport masquerading as a team sport, and you can see it when one guy makes the difference like Hosmer did last night.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great points from both of you guys. But, you mentioned Billy Beane and Moneyball before. I know Zach has a special interest in this. John Lester, that got traded out to Oakland this year, he pitched last night. He's a guy that they counted on to take them through that playoff, to get them through that game and maybe make a run for the Oakland Athletics. A guy like that, you see him go back to Boston. I've heard rumors about New York. I've heard rumors about Washington even. I've heard him all over the place. Where do you see him going after this year?
Well, first of all, there's no way he goes back to Oakland. I mean, did you see his face on the bench? When you let up 3 runs, you exit with a 3-run lead and a guy on, you expect to win that game.
Sure.
And that's the position that you've been brought there to put your team in, to turn it over to a bullpen that's been good all year. And to get the win is exactly what you should do. That's where you should be in that situation. And Lester was not happy on that bench. Do I think he comes back to Boston? I mean, I think he does if the Red Sox can find the cap space.
I agree. Yeah. No, I think Boston would definitely be a good fit. We heard talks about him wanting to go back to Boston after the season as soon as he was traded anyways. And, I mean, yeah, you could see he was not happy at all. They showed various different camera angles of him, and he was visibly frustrated.
I mean, it's essentially it's a little like the loan system they have in soccer. Is the way that this looked to me, is that you can loan a player away for a part of a season, and then you get him back right when the next season starts. And I think that's how it's going to be.
Good analogy, yeah.
All right, before we move on, boys, real quick, the division series, run me through them. Who are your picks and how many games?
All right, I got Washington 3, winner of tonight's game, which I think is the Pirates 1. I got the Los Angeles Dodgers 3, St. Louis Cardinals 2. I've got the Baltimore Orioles 3, the Detroit Tigers 1. And I have the Kansas City Royals 3, Los Angeles Angels 1, in a bit of an upset.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Baltimore, I think they take it in 4 games because Detroit, they're a team that really is inconsistent in the playoffs a lot, and they just can't seem to get the job done. They always seem to come up second best, I suppose, and I think it's a hungry Baltimore team that'll get through it. I think I want to see the Cinderella story with the Kansas City Royals, but I think in the end it'll be the Angels that come through in a 5-game series. Absolutely, I think. The Cardinals, I think that one will go to 5 games. Cardinals are a team that always just manages to squeak by. They're an entertaining team to watch, but it's always a little bit rough. And yeah, it's good again.
All right, perfect. Let's move on to some college football real quick. That was a great insight there, Mr. Beard. I loved it. College football. Brady Hoke is sitting on a fire seat up in Michigan right now. And another big headline for this week was FSU faking injuries, according to the NC State head coach. What are your thoughts on that, boys, and any other headlines you'd like to bring up?
I mean, Florida State, again, to me, didn't look like the number 1 team in the nation. Not a team I'd put in the playoff. I've said it all year. I think Alabama's better. Texas A&M's better. Well, speaking of the SEC, we're going to find out this week who's for real in the SEC. Got Alabama at Mississippi. That is a top 10 matchup. We've got LSU rolling into Auburn as a top 15 matchup, and we've got Texas A&M at at Mississippi State, which is another top 15 matchup. And the SEC West is up for grabs, going to be decided this week. But I mean, almost every team I listed there, I would take over Florida State. Same with Oklahoma. Same with Oregon. Even potentially an undefeated Nebraska squad or a one-loss Michigan State team could be a better team than Florida State.
Yeah, no, I agree. Florida State definitely didn't look like the number 1 team in the nation, but regardless, I think that's too. I think they're too prestigious of an organization a team to fake injuries. I just don't think Jimbo Fisher. I mean, as much as we love to hate on him here in Clemson, I just don't think that's something he would allow his players to do. And it was suspicious because NC State was running all over them, but I honestly don't think that they were faking injuries. I mean, when it boils down to it, Florida State is clearly a better team than NC State, even though it got a little bit hairy there. But I don't think they had to fake injuries to take that game. I think they just ended up just putting it into second gear and taking over.
Yeah, and NC State's coming to Clemson this week, and that should be a fun, high-scoring game. Brissett was a monster and had one of the plays of the year against Florida State this weekend. Deshaun Watson, for us, just put up 6 touchdowns on a UNC defense that can't stop anyone, but still, when you set an ACC record, I mean, can't argue with that.
I think it's funny that you're playing the character card with Jimbo Fisher, that he won't allow that to happen, that his team is above that, if you will. This is a guy that has a quarterback that has 3 off-the-field offenses, one that was suspendable in his eyes, 2, the rape, we're going to let it slide apparently, and we're going to let slide stealing crab legs. So yeah, he's a guy of character, I guess. So let's just go ahead and assume that his players are not going to fake injuries on the field, because that's absurd. Absurd that we would even think about that happening in the ACC. Think about that happening in Tallahassee. That team is it's a team that's going to do anything to win, and I 100% believe the NC State head coach that they do fake injuries because they're in trouble in the last 2 games, big trouble the last 2 games. It's completely reasonable to see them go ahead and fall down in the middle of the game to give the rest of the defense or offense a breather.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you look at Jameis Winston, you're talking about the number 1 quarterback in the nation, arguably. I mean, he's going to have a little bit of leniency, as much of a double standard as that sounds. I mean, would you guys want to bench Deshaun just because? I mean, Deshaun is a really good player, but if he were to go through that, would you still want him to not play? Would you rather put Cole Stout in? Absolutely not. You'd want to do what it takes to win. But I mean,
are you playing the what it takes to win card? We're talking about crab legs and sexual assault and
alleged.
Alleged?
Sexual assault, yes, sir.
We're defending Jameis Winston on this show. We're in Tigertown, USA. We're defending Jameis Winston right now.
No, I just believe in innocent until proven guilty.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Oh, come
that's
on
pretty
now.
American.
Silverman, take this, please.
I mean, innocent until proven guilty is a hallmark of the American justice system. I don't think you can really argue against that. Whether you can argue that evidence was covered up or an investigation was not properly followed, that I mean, absolutely you can make that case. But until they slap the cuffs on,
Boys,
You can
his
suspect-
his DNA was found in her underwear. His DNA was there. That's a fact.
I mean, he never denied that he had relations with her. He just denied that they were unconsensual. Is the story that I followed.
All right.
No.
But that being said, as a head ball coach, as a school, you can still suspend him while the justice system takes its part, like we've seen in the NFL with Peterson and Jonathan Dwyer and guys of that sort, Ray Rice being put on the commissioner's exempt list or cut outright. I think there's sanctions you can impose from within that were certainly not enough, but I mean you have to let the justice system run its course.
Very valid point. Let's switch it up a little bit to Michigan, like I mentioned before. Brady Hoke is off to an awful start in Michigan right now. They're a team that's desperate need of a win. They need something this weekend to happen. It even came out today that when they hired Brady Hoke a couple of years ago, Kevin Sumlin was a finalist along with him, and they wanted a Michigan man and hired Brady Hoke instead. And it's funny, hindsight is 2020, but you look back now, and Kevin Sumlin has a Heisman Trophy winner under his belt. He has a top 10 team under his belt. He's a powerhouse in the coaching community. So it's funny to look back at that now, but what do you see happening in Michigan with Brady Hoke, and it's time for a change up there?
Well, I've got an interesting NFL story that I'm going to couple with this, and that's the Jim Harbaugh story. There's been reports out of that locker room that there's disunity, that the players don't want to play for Harbaugh. And Harbaugh, as we all know, is a Michigan man. He stated multiple times that's his dream job. So I think if the San Francisco 49ers don't make the playoffs this year, Jim Harbaugh is going to be your new coach of the Michigan Wolverines.
Jim Harbaugh, okay.
That's bold, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'd be a serious transition going from a successful NFL team that's made deep playoff runs and going back to college. I personally don't see it happening, but I mean, anything can happen in sports, as we all know, and it'll be interesting to watch as it develops.
I mean, absolutely. And I mean, he had great success at Stanford. That's how he got the 49ers job in the first place. But I think that if the players don't want to play for him, I mean, there was rumors of him being traded to Cleveland before the season. I don't know how much substance there was to that, but just, I mean, that alone, that you've got rumors of him going to Cleveland, of him going to Michigan, the fact that his players don't want to play for him is being a story on SportsCenter. It doesn't bode well for Jim Harbaugh, the NFL coach. We've seen very successful college coaches come to the NFL, not do well, go back to college, have great success. I mean, Pete Carroll the first time, Nick Saban, Steve Spurrier. There's a long list, and I think Harbaugh is potentially a better college coach than an NFL coach, despite his success in the NFL.
Excellent points there, boys. Michigan is a team, is a program that is college football. So yeah, you want a big time guy in there, and I like the Jim Harbaugh move. I really do. I think that's an awesome idea. You were right. He was going to be traded ahead of time. He made his career, his living, if you will, up in Stanford. So we'll see what happens. But moving right along, we're going to talk about some Clemson football real quick. Let's get a quick recap, if you guys will, of the UNC game last week and your thoughts on that, and then we'll move ahead to preview the NC State game.
I mean, I've been calling all year for Dabo to unleash Deshaun Watson, and what we saw was Deshaun Watson unleashed. I mean, he had a fantastic game, 450 yards, 6 touchdowns. Stats speak for themselves. I mean, he's cool, he's calm, collected under center. He makes the right decisions, other than, the one interception that gave me a little bit of a flashback to Taj Boyd. But, Deshaun had a fantastic game in torching a UNC secondary.
Yeah, you touched a bit on that one interception he threw. I think a lot of fans in the stands were concerned that he would, just fold under the pressure and fold under everything after throwing that one interception. But it was really reassuring to see him step up and keep his poise and confidence and come back and keep being effective. A lot of young quarterbacks would let that disturb them, and I think that was real telling of what he's really made of, to see him come back and still be effective.
Let me ask you this. The running game kind of disappeared on Saturday. This was a team that ran the ball effectively against Florida State. They had a lot of success running between the tackles. Where did that go against a UNC team that on paper is not as good as Florida State?
Well, I'm not still quite sure if Dabo trusts C.J. Davidson after that fumble, and I think this is really where we miss Zach Brooks, who had some experience. He's a guy who's out for the season. He's not going to be back, but he would have been, I think, a better option for the number one running back, and I think he would have provided a lot of stability and leadership in the running game.
Yeah, no, and I mean another aspect is when you have Deshaun Watson throwing 6 touchdowns. I mean, it's okay to not really focus as much on your rushing game, especially when UNC's game plan was pretty much to make Deshaun Watson beat them, and he did just that. They were going to crowd the line and focus on the run game, and that's why we ended up adjusting to being more pass heavy. And as we saw, Deshaun Watson can handle what any defense can throw at him.
He did a great job this past week. I don't know. I know we talked about this earlier in the year, Zach and I. Cole Stout versus Deshaun Watson. Cole obviously lost a job last week or 2 weeks ago in Florida State, but giving him snaps this past weekend, that breaks up a rhythm of a young quarterback. That breaks up a rhythm of a guy who is in his first career start, first time in the big scene, first time in Death Valley playing. You got to wonder if that's going to continue, and from what I understand, I guess it's going to continue. Cole apparently, quote-unquote, deserves the snaps. He's earned those snaps. Is that something that we need to be concerned about as Clemson fans, as Clemson followers, or is that something that's going to go away in the next couple of weeks, you think?
I think in a game like UNC, a game that we're going to win, it's a game that's at home in Death Valley, a night game that you've got the crowd behind. It's going to be, a halftime game, quote-unquote, that you can get Cole Stout of snaps, but if the South Carolina game, the Louisville game, big games that are going to go down to the wire, no, I don't think you can do that. And I still think that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback, and that our quarterback is Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think any doubt that Dabo Swinney or whatever has in Deshaun Watson, I think they'll be erased in the coming weeks. I think NC State will be a huge game for that. If we see Deshaun come back strong, and have a good performance. Obviously, he's not going to throw another 6 touchdowns because that was a record in itself. But if you see him perform as well as he did last weekend, or in terms of quality, I think we'll see him be our starter. And I think any questions about putting Cole back in will be erased if that's what happens. If it doesn't, the controversy might stick around for a little bit. But in the end, Deshaun Watson has to be our quarterback. It's silly to keep playing with the offense by throwing Cole in. It's almost cruel to Cole at this point to keep throwing him in there when everyone knows it's Deshaun.
Yeah, Morris' system just works better with a mobile quarterback.
Absolutely.
All right, fair enough. What about Venables' system? We saw the defense, they played a great first half against UNC, and then they kind of disappeared in the second half. They let up a couple of touchdowns, a couple of big plays, took some really bad penalties. Where do you see them guys stacking up next week against NC State, and what happened last week against UNC?
I'm not particularly concerned going into next week. I think it was just kind of a lack of focus for a game that they saw as already won. But you can't really play sloppy against a better team like Louisville, like South Carolina, like NC State. But I think they're going to be locked down. Venables is going to have them focused this week. I think that's going to be a major talking point in practice. That if we're up at half, we have to come out and we have to play with more intensity. You have to be better in the second half to just put the game beyond all doubt.
Yeah, no, I agree. In last week's show, we talked about how Clemson failed to close out against Florida State, and a lot of that had to do with lack of leadership and a lot of maturity, I guess, and how we had a lot of young players coming in. And I think that was, again, a prevalent issue, which is why we saw so many points come out. Because, Clemson got out to a really big lead, and I think after a while, whether they consciously realized it or not, the defense thought they didn't really have to keep trying as hard as they did in the first half or so. And it was a slip up that we can't afford to let happen against better schools. Okay. I agree, but I think again it's a work in progress, and we'll see the team improve on that moving forward.
All right, boys. Anything else to add before we sign off for the night?
No, that's about it. Go Orioles.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you again next week, 8:00. Okay, never mind. We're out.
Oh, we have a caller.
We have a caller.
We're out.
Just now. Oh, we don't have a caller.
We don't have a caller. False alarm, guys.
That first